I'm gonna say yes. I'm gonna say yes.
There we go. Hold on. So bald. So bad.
Come on, man.
Zoom.
You sway one way, and
Yeah.
take 5 seconds to sway the
All
other.
of them.
Here we go.
We're live?
Yeah.
All right. We're good, Rich.
We're good?
Yeah.
I'd like to welcome you all out to our school board meeting this evening. We're going to, Superintendent Decker, is there anything we need to report out of closed session?
There's not.
There's not, okay, very good. Let's see, we'll go to 3.1 flag salute by trustee Height.
We have the flag behind us here. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I see I skipped. Inconsistent. Let's see, 3.2, Jen, can we have a roll call, please?
Rich Carnation,
Here.
Eric Heinz,
Here.
Bill Adams.
Here.
Malinali Lopez. Here. Student Board Member Kai Heflin
Here.
and Stephanie Amadis. That's it.
Okay, and we already did 3.3 out of order. Is there any, have it on here, but are there any things that need to be brought up amongst the board that need to be changed, any schedules, anything, any additions?
No.
I just would like to point out that there's been quite a few people that have asked. Our next board meeting, which is on the 10th, one of the item issues will be our COVID and our masking will be one of the discussion points. And so a lot of folks have asked why we put it off to then. And I explained that we're meeting it here where there's no room. And out of respect for everybody that's involved, we will have that discussion on the 10th. So that will be then. We'll skip to next to open items, public comment. Is there anybody here in the public that would like to speak on anything that is not listed as an agenda item?
This would be,
There's
if
no
you-
agenda items. Right?
there's one. I think it would be relevant. I think if you wanted to speak now, it'd be relevant. Probably.
I think we're gonna have to talk after at least we heard the report. Is that possible?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Is it possible just to say something after the report?
Sure. I mean, we have public comment after each item as well.
Okay.
So you can either speak now or you can wait and speak after we're
Okay.
done with 5.1 or
Good.
I'll be
Well,
open
it
to
might
that.
all be answered, so.
either way. So,
Okay, great.
all righty.
Rich,
So
sorry, is there a report out of closed session? Did I miss it?
No, you-
nothing.
There's
we
nothing.
said
I'm sorry. Yeah, I went out of order. Okay. And so we're not going anywhere. So if something that you would like to talk about doesn't get covered, you'll have the opportunity to do it for sure.
we're a small group.
Right, yeah, so, all right, we're gonna jump to 5.1, discussion with Windsor Unified School District course offering. Superintendent Decker, you'll present this to the board.
Yeah, so this is a study session, right? So this is an opportunity for the board to really have some robust discussion. And what I'd like to center our conversation around is what I put on this paper as a goal. Is to create a shared system of beliefs with regard to deciding which courses / programs are offered in the master schedule. And the master schedule is TK-12. We often think of it as just high school or middle school, but really it's what we're offering and how we go about deciding what we're going to be offering. So some of the things that have been asked for by the board are on this paper. Amy actually helped me earlier today to go through the historical course offerings at the high school with regard to VAPA. And you can see if you go all the way to the right-hand side of this, guys, there's more here if you want to have some, if you're interested. If you go all the way to the right side, you can see the number of sections in 1819, and you can see the enrollment at the bottom. I don't necessarily want to read this to you, obviously, but I'd like you to at least go through it so you have kind of a frame. We offer a lot of courses within the VAPA realm, And you can see that some of them are also CTE courses. And if you're wondering, CTE means the teacher is accredited. They're allowed to be a CTE teacher because they have experience in the, private sector really, which allows them to then be a CTE teacher. So I want to give you an opportunity to ask any questions regarding this data. We're not going to talk so much about it. It's more just to anchor some of our conversation. But do you have any questions? Yes, Bill.
Can you, at least as proposed, give us a sense, and we could maybe write it in
For next
of
year.
what 22-23 looks like?
Yeah, and I'm going to have to go to Brian here.
Okay.
I think you've got this in your head pretty well, I think.
What I have is the seat count, and then from course requests, and then we would just divide that number typically by 26, and that would give us the number of sections. So Amy's provided you the number of sections. I just have the number of seat counts because until they actually make it into the class, because of course conflicts and things like that, we don't know exactly how many sections we're going to run.
But I think what's relevant to this conversation and what kind of prompted this was Art 1, 2, 3 AP. So that section. So Brian, are we anticipating going? I know this is an area that we were going to reduce sections, and we were going from 12 to 8. So 4 sections there. Were any of the other sections increasing?
No.
Okay.
Any of the others decreasing?
The innovative filmmaking.
We'll go to 0.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Jeremy, just with CTE, the classes that are CTE classes, there's additional funding for those type of classes through different programs than normal, correct?
Sometimes, not always. So not every CTE class would have additional funding. We have a number of different grants that I should really just kick this way because they're going to know all of them much better than me. So if you want to go through.
We have a number of funding sources for CTE. We have a CTE incentive grant, and we have several of our 11-12 cores funded by California Partnership Academies. There's a variety of other CTE grants that the school, the district has been awarded. Many of those pay for the supplies, professional development. They don't all pay for a staff person. So we're in terms of creating sections, but they are, all of these that are indicated as CTE have the ability to have some of their supplies and their coordinators and that sort of thing supported by CTE funding.
Okay. And excuse me if I ask some questions that I maybe should know, but I don't. With Innovative Film 1, 2, is that a precursor to Broadcasting 1,
No.
2?
It's a standalone course.
Okay. Are these all standalone, or are some of them, which ones
They're a
stack on top of
capstone
the
or
other?
So they're tips. So if you look on the left-hand column, if they move over, if like you can see the progression, Art 1, Art 2, Art 3 AP,
Okay.
that's the progression. So nothing going down is
A prereq.
a prereq.
Got, okay, so still, yeah, so for art, that's the progression, not some other class.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
If I can jump in for a second. So
Sure.
Brian and Jeremy, you mentioned the 22-23 school year. How many sections that would match up with these courses are there? 20, did you say 24, 26 FTEs? 26
No, he was saying we usually run classes at 26
classes of
students.
26 size. Okay, because I was just looking across the list here.
Mhm.
And I know that enrollment's not exactly the same, but it's gone up and down. It's, relatively similar. In 18-19, we had 36 sections. Then we went to 34, then
Mhm.
32. This current year, we're at 29.
Cut it out.
What do we envision for next year? Is it going to stay at 29? Or are we asking it to go down to 23 or 4 or 5?
It's probably 4 to 25.
25?
You're talking about the total number of fine arts,
Total number,
Times
when you add up
24.
the columns going up and down, yeah.
31.
Bill just said 25.
These
so-
may, though, it might not be reflected exactly in this, right? Because it's 2 different documents, meaning that, are we missing something that's supposed to be in here, Brian, when you've got 31?
So in terms, so the so 21, 22 is what we currently have, what we're projecting. So there's courses like yearbook that's on here, but doesn't give fine arts credit. And so when
I
we
just
go-
want to know how we match up with what's on this sheet now for next
What's
school
next
year.
year?
31 sections that will achieve fine art.
Are they the same as that are here?
except for innovative filmmaking. That's it.
So we're adding sections next year then, because we have 29 now. You're saying we're going to 31.
You
I
gotta
don't think we're
explain
adding
how-
sections.
You gotta explain how you're creating other
Okay.
opportunities for fine arts.
I'm gonna have to check.
Yeah, I just did a little quick math. I'm not trying to, it's not combative at all. I hope it doesn't come across that way. I just want to make sure that we're consistent when we look at data. Because it's hard if we have apples and oranges.
Understood.
So like
So
I
you said
mentioned,
29, how many
at the
did you
far
say?
right, we've got a 36 when I add up all the numbers on our chart.
Yeah.
And then the
36,
next column
34.
over in 1920, we have 34. And then in 2021, we're at 32. This current year, we're at 29. What are we looking at for next year? To make sure we have the data complete, is what I'm wondering about.
Oh, I see. Okay. So
So you were saying,
so drum, oh no, drumline is on there. So guitar is increasing to 2.
Is it guitar 1, guitar 2, or is it just?
It's just
two
two
courses
sections of
it?
guitar.
What about the way that you're creating
So
fine art
this,
options?
if we
to
lost,
advance?
They're on here.
Okay.
Breaking even.
so we're going from 1 through 3 AP, which has been at 12, we're going to 8. Is that what you said a minute ago? So we're losing 4 in that spot, right?
I thought I remember you saying we were gonna be with 24 total fine arts sections, including all options at one point.
Currently up to 28. We were going down by. I thought it was 24 as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, right here.
Okay.
24.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's 24.
When you say sections, are you talking about, I'm sorry, just quick clarification, is that a class?
Correct.
Section or a number of students?
It's a class.
Yeah, I apologize.
Digital photography.
No, it's not an apology. I just
Yeah.
want to make sure that I understand the data,
Yes.
how the progression has been made throughout the years to reduce.
So
There's actually 3
Because
sections.
we couldn't have it.
One
Together because we don't know
a
them.
little smaller than the others, but
So-
there are 3.
So next year, we're proposing we would do 24 classes and then of fine arts.
And I will ask you to keep something in mind. So when we were looking at this, and we're trying to make sure that we run classes full, that hasn't always happened in the past.
Right.
So I understand where we're going and looking at the trend, losing classes. It follows enrollment, but also I think that we've really tried to make a point to run these classes as full as we can.
And so the direction that I really am interested to hear from the board is we absolutely have the student requests to fill every single, if we kept,
But here, don't go
Okay,
there.
we're not
Don't go
going
there
there.
yet. We're not ready. So, not ready yet.
Brian, and I'm sorry, who teaches production design 1 and 2?
That's the elective course in Nueva.
So Paul Kinnaman,
It's in the CTE.
Okay,
or sorry, Dave Beal. So Paul Kinnaman is the Foundation of Digital Design
And multimedia.
and Multimedia 1 and 2.
thank you.
Any other questions about this? Is just to anchor us, I think.
This is good. I appreciate you giving us this. That way we kind of have a place to start from that we look at. I think, I've thought about this a lot. About what should we be offering,
Oh, don't go there yet.
Oh, I'm
Don't
sorry.
go there yet.
I'll just
Okay.
offer one clarification here is, looks like digital photography is 3 this year. But this is the number of periods because often there is 2 levels combined into a single class. So each of those levels would actually, in the terms of master scheduling, would be a section of themselves. They have separate rosters, but they're meeting at the same time in the same room with the same teacher.
But that would be consistent across all 4 of these years that are.
It is, and it's typical in several of these. For example, Art 3 and AP Studio Art meet at the same time in the same class.
And if you don't mind, before we go into the big discussion part,
Yes, sir.
and I wasn't trying to stir it up, by looking at numbers,
You're
I'm
all
sorry,
good.
but I was kind of the person that initiated having this meeting tonight or asking
Yeah.
for it to be put off onto tonight. It wasn't in any way to save somebody's job or to cut somebody's job or to reallocate funds in any special way towards a certain program. I just wanted to make sure we all had a chance to discuss
Yes, sir.
all the options that were available and what's on the table from K all the way through 12,
Yes, sir.
not just 3 or 4 sections of the high school.
Yep. And that's what I'm hoping to do today.
Thank you.
So I'm going to start this with getting your brains going a little bit. And, we do, and this isn't a setup, so I don't want you to think that, but I really want to know how you think. Because I want to know personally, not collectively, but personally, how you would go about kind of deciding what we offer. Like, what's your thought process? So I put some things to consider here. Like, are we going to would you base it on student interest? Would you base it on the teachers that we have in place and design, the offerings around our teachers? Would you do it around the district mission and vision? What we decide that, and then we make our offerings based on our district mission and vision. If there's funding attached to it, do we prioritize those courses? Do we want to make sure we have a lot of different options for kids, or do we want to focus in one specific area? I think there's a lot to factor, and I think that's part of the struggle we've had as a board, is we all maybe have different ideas of where we should focus our energy. So I would like to know not where we should do it, like we should be doing build. That's not what I mean. I mean, what things do you factor in that we should really be thinking about if we were deciding which courses to offer? And those are just some ideas. So I don't want to force somebody to go first, but I'd love to hear kind of your
If
thoughts.
somebody wants to go first, they can. I have no problem going first on this. I've thought about this a lot, and I kind of want to share it with the rest of the board and see how they feel about it. And
Can I say one thing, Rich?
absolutely.
So I want each of you guys to go around. We're going to have the discussion towards the end.
Okay.
So I want to hear what you guys have to say, all of you, and then I'm going to bring it back to where we actually have the discussion and really talk things through, if that makes sense.
So I'd like to kind of, if we could, divide how we look at things in two different prisms. One, the requirements.
Mhm.
So for example, math, science, English, those kind of things.
But there's different grad requirements, college requirements, so there's different ways to look at that too.
Right. But I don't even know if I'm saying it the right way, but academic wise.
Okay.
For example, I don't want to just pigeonhole myself and say, I'm only going to want to have classes where there's a great big interest. Because in the highest level maths,
Mhm.
we may only have 3, 5, 7 kids in a particular year that are at the very highest level. I believe that that's a class that we should be offering those kids if they're capable of it. Now, there might be certain classes that they're so good at that we just can't.
Mhm.
And we may not have the teachers that can teach it, and they may have to go to a college, junior college or Sonoma State to get that level. So that there's a trade-off. And I guess that's the thing. Everything is a trade-off. And that's kind of the most important part. But I wouldn't want to ever be in a position where I'm saying, we're not going to offer this class because we only have so many kids.
Mhm.
That's more the principle, but on the academic side.
Okay.
On the elective side, I think it is more driven. But then on the same hand, my parents, there are certain things like ballet, tap dancing, the different kind of arts, those kind of arts that the schools didn't offer. And I don't know, and there's a good discussion of whether they should offer it. And are those the things that you pick up in like a club or a dance troupe that you belong to in town or something like that? So that's a discussion I kind of want to have. But look at all the list of all these different things. I'd almost kind of want to have the board go down and say, hey, if you had to rank these, which one's the most important? Which ones do you think are most important? Kind of list, from top to bottom. Because when we all talk about the arts, I think we all agree, oh yeah, we like the arts, we want to support it. But I think we each have different arts or art that we are more supportive of and some a little bit less.
Okay.
And so I think I'd like to kind of have that discussion more based on that to kind of find out what is it, which arts are we kind of more generally going to have and push harder and invest more in, and some we may not invest in much or at all.
Can I ask you what drives that decision for you in that what we invest in?
Probably my own personal likes.
Okay.
For example, like I've told you guys all before, since I got here at Windsor High School, almost went in the beginning, I've wanted a marching band.
Mhm.
I was in a marching band So I know that my experience as a kid of being in all the different bands and then being in a marching band was so rewarding. And I want other kids to have that same type of belonging and reward, because I know how important it was to me. Same with a lot of the other extracurriculars, but there was a lot of things that I enjoyed as a kid that the schools didn't offer. We had to get it somewhere else. So that's why, I listen to business people and they say, hey, 10 years ago, I'd tell engineers, that's where we want to go. And now I hear them go like, it used to be engineer, now it's digital. Learn how to program, learn how to shoot videos, that's where we're going. And so, and honestly, I was really moved by Bill's comment at our last board meeting, when he was talking about his son and architecture, but the art part of it. And I was thinking like, dang, if I would have took that class, maybe I could have learned to draw a little bit better. I mean, I'm in the construction business and I can't draw anything out for my clients. So, we talk about different kind of arts. I would like to kind of know where our board is on different, if we had to rank them, what are the most important? You asked the question of where do we put more of our energy, more of our investment? So I don't.
Or how do we make that decision? Not necessarily where, but how do we make the decision where to invest? What drives those dollars? Because the specific courses are hard, right? They change, but what drives the decision? So that's really what I'm trying to get at for you personally, not as a collective yet. We're going to get there at the end in my mind, but you personally.
I go back to my own childhood experience.
And I think that's the crux of it.
I was very fortunate that I had a lot. My parents kept us very busy. We didn't have time to get in trouble. So we had a very, very broad experience as kids in everything. And so I know which one of those things meant more to me and which ones other, and my siblings and all the other kids that we did things together. I mean, I've had my 40th class reunion and we still talk about when we did things in band and whatever, and different experiences. When we got to go to Disneyland, we won some award, got to go. So
personal experience. I think my takeaway is it's personal experience.
Yeah. And I want other kids to have that same type of opportunity. So
who would like to go next? I'd like to hear from each of you individually if possible.
I'll dive in. Sure. I agree with a lot of what Rich said. I was a musician growing up as well, played from third grade all through high school and community bands after that and things. But I also had a mother who was very artistic, owned a floral shop, all the different things. My father was a contractor and could do the drawings amazingly, even though he never had college education, things like that. I think so. Personal growth, I think, is a big part of that. But I also think, the trend in where society is moving, the digital things that were mentioned and the engineering things that were mentioned are a big focus on what we want to do to create college and career readiness. That's a big focus of what we do, and that's our business.
Sure.
And so that being said, though, it needs to start, in my opinions, from the lower levels to develop those interests. If kids aren't able to get into elementary or middle school music, then they probably won't start in high school. If students aren't able to take a photography class or a club in 4th, 5th, 6th grade, maybe they won't want to do digital photography later, only because maybe somebody hears it's an easy elective and get that one out of the way kind of thing. And I don't know that that's a good policy either. As an educator, I don't want kids to take the easy way out. I want them to be challenged.
Right.
And so it's a kind of a double-sided situation for me. I'd love to offer everything, have 100 offerings like you see in a college course catalog, but they're not paid the same way that we are. Student enrollment's a big piece of what we do. And I've been on the other side of it as an educator where my electives have been taken off of the master schedule because there wasn't enough interest. And then it almost never will come back. And that's a difficult thing as well. So when we don't offer health anymore, kids have to take it somewhere else. Or when we don't offer weight training anymore, kids have to do it on their own. Things like that are difficult when it shouldn't be the funding basis necessarily, but I know that it's a business and we need to have the bottom line look positive. But at the same time, it's hard to get things back when we do lose them. chorus, for example. I'm sure there are enough kids that we could have a great choral program. We've had it in the past, but we don't offer chorus at high school anymore. Maybe because the interest wasn't there in the elementary. It could have been a teacher popularity. It could have been a little trend of kids. It could be all kinds of things. Not pointing the finger at any one person for that or any one program. But I would love for us to have an enriched choral program that they could go to conferences and go to seminars and go to competitions and such. And it's not available right now. So that's disappointing, especially considering that we want to try to compete with San Rose High School and their special program that they have down there for the arts, Arts Quest. So that's a situation that we can't be everything. I understand that, but we have to try to figure out where the positives and negatives are on the budget and on the student interest and developing that interest. Maybe we ask what we should do to develop it for them sometimes because the kids don't know yet. So that's the hard part for me. If that makes any sense. I talked in a circle a little bit, but
It's okay. It's actually a really hard question to
Yeah.
answer. So, and I recognize that. Would like to go next.
I'm passionate
Bill.
on
No,
both
no.
sides of it.
I'd like to go last.
Like to go last?
Well, dang, I'd like to have Kai go before me then.
Yeah.
You have an equal voice here.
So Kai, actually, I think it would be a really interesting perspective. So in terms of what you want to take, what would you hope we offer and how do you think we should make the decisions on what we offer for you?
Yeah, I like how Rich and Eric were talking about their childhood experiences. And I think school and I think in life in terms of the best experiences that you have, a lot of them are when you're younger. And I think the same goes for me, like how they said that they were in band and marching band. And I'm in art right now. And I think that art 1, art 2, art 3, and AP, like art 1, art 2, and art 3, I did those classes, and right now I'm doing AP art, and I think those classes, or specifically in that area, those are the ones that I think are, for me personally, are ranked pretty high. Would be number one for me, and that's just going off of personal experience because I have a lot of great memories, and and also in terms of boosting my artistic skills. And the same thing goes with every other student who are in all of these other classes, because in these classes, what they're meant to do and what they do is that they grow the student skills in the arts. And I think just like how Eric said, having all these classes and having a whole load of them for every student would be absolutely wonderful, but I know that realistically we can't do that. And so I think that I would take it on to Bill here.
Kai, can I pose a question to you?
Yeah.
I think it'd be interesting. So let's say, which would never happen, but let's say there was no interest in art 1, 2, 3 or AP art, right? We have no kids. We had 6 kids interested.
Yeah.
At that point, do we decide to not offer that class, or do we offer it because it's enriching enough for our school to offer and for those students to take?
Yeah, I think.
What is your opinion on that?
Well, so
we only have 6 kids interested in any of the top art classes, which would never happen, obviously,
Yeah,
right? I'm just giving you a hypothetical.
Yeah. So in total of
We
art,
have 6 total kids interested. Do we
Mhm.
then still try to offer that art class, or do we say, no, there's not enough interest, we got to go a different direction? Even though, because I picked that because how powerful it was for you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I think that especially from a finance, I mean, as we said, I mean, great if we could offer those classes for those 6 people, for those 6 students, but financially speaking, that in total of having 4 classes for 6 kids, I don't know.
It'd be hard. I was just, and that's not even a fair question. It was just, I just wanted you to get your.
Well,
your
but
thinking.
it's a realistic question because as I mentioned earlier, that's what happened with chorus.
It's true.
We had 25 at the middle school, things changed around. We had 7 at the high school. And
Right.
could we keep it viable? It didn't make the cut one year and it hasn't come back in 3 years now. So maybe there's still interest or maybe there's not, but it's not even on the offering right now that I'm aware of. So tough to do.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, Bill.
You're gonna hold out.
I think you're up.
She's playing hardball.
As a professional artist, you get to.
She's smiling.
I have a lot to say.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. Thank you. I want to start with the question that Kai got, because to me, that means we failed our students in 3rd and 5th and 7th grade. If we have district articulation of an art program, we are building that interest because it is a priority for our community, our parents, the students. We got $1.7 million a few years ago to do arts integration, and we invested almost all of it. There was some leftover money, and we got speaker systems and some gear and some things, but mostly it was to get about 95+% of our TK to 5 teachers, the classroom teachers, to invest early on. So if they're doing, I should know and I don't know, but if it's a 3rd or 4th grade Spanish mission, right, the mission unit, and those teachers really love that, but they can't dance a dance or sing a song to save their life, or maybe make a poem or draw a postcard, those 4 art disciplines are available to them to provide to their students, so that the students and their families have an expectation that they're going to get art all the time, right? So, the premise on the end of that first line right before the question mark, Jeremy, is in any given year. I think, again, that misses the point in my view. I think we should have an arts strategy that looks at a 5 or 10 year. We should look at what our 2nd grader does and what do they do until they're 18. That has atrophied, right? I'm going to answer the question eventually. I'm just going to trench it because I'm staggered.
This is your meeting, my friend.
So, we have a 1741 down to 1618, a 7% drop in enrollment and a 30% drop in visual and performing arts offerings. And this is, I understand, just the high school.
Yes, sir.
If I had to guess, I don't know. I know there's a broader variety, to the credit of Brian and his regime at the middle school, a broader variety of electives. What that has done, I think, has had a direct effect to undermine, for example, the music program at the high school, because it used to be those were a couple of the real major electives. We almost had a boa constrictor at the middle school. And as there are many, many other interesting, challenging, competitive, interesting things to have students do, arts perhaps, and I don't know this because we don't have that aspect of the schedule. So what's important to me is to decide as the governance team, is an arts program or any other kind of program. We sort of said CTE as a philosophy is a valuable thing to do, use that money. It's a college career piece and it's going well for us. In my mind, revisiting our 5 years visual and performing arts strategy document is a valuable thing to do. And I'd like to see us do that and sort of report back in October or November to look, say, what, are we going to still have one? If we do we keep everything in there? Do we dump it? And just look at that from a strategy? Because here's where I see it's a challenge. And I'll just give you a personal example. I was staggered when I got on the school board because I have, particularly my middle son was active in music and my daughter a little less so. That what was driving, I may have heard this actually from Amy back in the day. One of the things that drove when string orchestra was scheduled is it couldn't conflict with the AP core.
Mm-hmm.
Not that you needed to be an AP student to be able to play the viola, but in our school structure and where kids came from by the time they got to high school, we didn't have El Sistema like they have down in Roseland. And, poor people can play the violin as well. We just didn't really foster that, for example. But what I found is if you are an English language learner or have other intervention academic needs, or you are special education students, it'd be very interesting to see what their participation percentage is. Because that engagement, because to me, the arts are, and I wrote enrichment, but you used elective and extracurricular. And to me, that makes them extra. And to me, their core curriculum, it's what gives us joy and creativity and engagement of our students. I'll take math and English scores going down if it means we can engage more students in the joy and creativity of arts. I philosophically, that's where I am. I think that's the legacy when you go to that 40-year anniversary. Mm-hmm. Now, I think the courses to ask a different year. I mean, even when I read that, I think we've sort of lost track of why we offer things, right? Sure. And part of that is and again, we're going to talk about us collectively. For me, it is to find a way for our students to have multiple meaningful and diverse art experiences over their school experience. not everybody's going to become a filmmaker. Not everybody's going to be an AP art student or
Or a music teacher.
a music teacher like my son or whatever. But that's what they'll remember. I mean, I love English and science and things, but to me, the arts classes are as equally important, or in my view, almost more important from the student experience, from engagement and the social emotional learning and the equity standpoint than almost anything else we do. And I think we've lost that along. We've allowed that to lapse a little bit. And I sort of put myself in that. And so it was difficult with COVID, right? So we have a chance for a reset. But philosophically, I think it should be the first priority that we have as a district. And we're not, in my mind, trying to be ArtQuest. But it may mean that we look at this list or other things to say, maybe I'm just trying to think in sort of categories. There's maybe 5 different sort of general categories of fine arts stuff here. Well, maybe we want to do 3 really well, but make that a deliberate thing.
Sure.
But I think it is the most important piece, as we who have our community schools, the most important thing that we can do to give joy and creativity to our schools, our students. And I feel we've lost our way on that. And I don't blame any of you who are charged to, run the schools or teach at the schools. I think we've lost our way collectively as sort of a governance team and priorities. And out of that, we're trying to keep this together. And so it's a pivot that's a long-term sort of development. And I think it's a long-term repivot to say, now, when we get right down to it, what's the magnitude of investment we want to make that? And everything's a zero-sum game.
Got it.
So, however, CTE and other things, this is a place where new revenue can come in. So it's not exactly a zero-sum game. And there's that capacity. But to me, it's joy and creativity of the students.
Got it.
And equity. There is a likelihood, I would guess, again, focusing on the high school, that a kid who's on the yearbook may be on a sports team and maybe in an interest club and may eat lunch with other kids. Those kids that aren't eating lunch with other kids may not be in an arts class. They may not be on the sports team. And they're that 20, 30, I don't know what percentage is, but the percentage of, I think, an art outreach to them could be one of the highlights of their academic career. And maybe their mental health career as well. I don't know. So,
their enjoyment of their day.
I think so. I think there's joy and creativity, and we cannot underestimate that.
So if I'm hearing you, I want to paraphrase. I think that what you're saying to me is we establish our priority, I think, under the umbrella of art, and we pick our categories. We invested them in an early age and vertically align them up the ladder. Correct? That's kind of what I gathered. There was other things in there, but is that fair?
Yeah, starting with the philosophy that the joy and creativity and engagement that uniquely provides. You may get that through some other athletic teams or something, but that's why it's important, right? It's doing something for their brains and their joy that I don't know that we are purposefully weaving in across the board to our other students.
Got it.
Yeah.
If I could jump on Bill's point about the joy. When we build that culture in our school district, our attendance is going to go even higher because kids are looking forward. They want to be at school. And so whatever the area interest is that they find at the school that day, it's going to drive more participation. So, and again, that's kind of where I go back to for me, the band and those kind of things, because I didn't miss a day of school all 4 years in high school, not one. I loved going to school, and I didn't love a couple classes in the school, but I loved that other experience. And I was a pretty happy kid because I had a lot of enrichment. So to that point, and that was just it. I mean, when we have our kids with more joy, those two people's jobs are going to be a heck of a lot easier because we just don't have as many issues at school because the kids are happy. They're engaged. And so, and this is where I hope we kind of get to, as we go through this whole process, we get to those things that we can help most kids get the most joy. So I think that's a good word.
All right, Malanali.
All right,
You're
so
up.
I'm taking notes. So Bill, I love everything that you said, and I think that you and I are probably most aligned on the same page because I agree that I feel that in a way we have failed the students And I feel like that failure comes mainly from the direction of the board because we have not had this updated strategic plan that we really need to have. And I also want to say that I recently gave a presentation to this group that is called Impact 100 of the Redwoods, because they asked me to present on how they could increase their art offerings and make them more equitable in Sonoma County. And the first thing that I shared was that, when I was in high school, I was so concerned and obsessed with getting into college that I only focused on my college prep classes. And because of that, I always felt that I missed out on a great experience to take any art classes. So I took 0 art offerings in high school, like no music or, fine art or theater, anything like that, like 0, right? Because I was so obsessed with this college prep curriculum. And then when I got to college, I was in my 3rd year, and I met this famous filmmaker, Lourdes Portillo, who was nominated for an Academy Award in the year that she was my teacher. And I was so impressed by her, first of all, because I'd never met a Latina filmmaker before, ever. And she mentioned that when she made her first movie, that she was a single mom who had just had her child, right? And she made her first movie while pregnant and then had her child, right? And I was so impressed by her, that I never imagined that somebody could have joy in doing something and also make a career out of it. And she set that example. So I'm sharing this with you because I also believe that representation is really, really important, and we need to weave that in. We need to make representation more equitable for our kids in the arts. So that's a big chunk. But what I really want to get down to is that I think we also need to balance out student interest, what the kids are interested in, with teachers working to identify community resources. So where they can bring in, for example, teaching artists, bring in grants, to fund artists that look like the kids that we're teaching in the schools. Like there needs to be that connection to representation. So I feel that this direction should come from the board, but that we need to have this balance of gauging student interest, because I don't think we have a good mechanism for that, because it can't just be about what classes they sign up for. It has to be about us presenting them this whole array of opportunities and show them, explicitly how the arts are actually connected to very viable careers, right? And how it's connected to 21st century skills. Because I think that now that computers have taken over our world, we need creativity more than ever. We need to show how people can actually make a living as well. Because otherwise they're going to be like me, where, they're just like, oh, how can I get to college so I can get a career, so I can get a job, right? And that's kind of a boring existence, to be honest. They need more creativity, as Bill was saying. So I think that I want to end with just saying that we need this balance of student interest, plus this teachers identifying community resources and identifying arts opportunities and artists that look like the kids that we're teaching. So therefore making the situation more equitable. So that's where I'm at.
So I want to go through and I want to explain our current process, because what I'm anticipating is we need to modify our current process. And that's where I want to get to at the end. So what it currently looks like, I have Brian and Amy sitting here with us because really they're the ones that go through. I don't get into the weeds with them often and say, I want you to offer these courses. What I say to them is you have this much FTE. And then I leave it to them to determine what these courses look like and what the course offerings are. So
Connected to credentialing and such as well.
correct, yeah, but that's a part of it for sure. And so there's a lot of factors that go into the courses that ultimately make the cut. And that's really where I'd like them to go through and explain the master scheduling process. And I don't know who is best to go first, or if you want to both just play off each other. Yes.
If I can just say something so that way they can address it, and they probably are. I know that I felt, and I've heard it a million times from kids, that they're pigeonholed in that if they're in this core, this track, I was on the college prep track, like you were talking about, right? Which precluded me from taking some of the electives that I wanted because they were either at the same time, or you can't take that because you're this core or something else. So if you guys could address how the master scheduling works that precludes kids from doing that, and what the options might be that we could look at to maybe have it be different, if it's possible.
Would like to go first.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
okay. So the core system does drive the high school. And I say, coming in as an outsider, I was skeptical about the course system as well. And having spent almost a year there, I'm in love with the course system. It is absolutely what we should be doing at the high school. It's what differentiates us. It's we just did our youth truth survey, and belonging was the #1 area. You know, the kids said that they felt like we do the best. So, but it comes at a cost. Everything with scheduling comes at a cost. So the issue is singletons. Singletons. So that's a single course that's only offered one time on the schedule. And so anytime that you have a number of singletons, then you will have conflicts. So we talked about if you're only offering one AP US history course and there's only one strings course, and if they're offered at the same time, you're going to have to choose. And so when we do our cores, we do them in typically pods of 3. And so those happen like maybe first block, second block, third block. So then on that day, you have your 4th block open, and then you have all 4 of your blocks on the other day that we have to find your math and find your foreign language and kind of piece that all together. So if you're in courses that don't have a lot of single, like Spanish 1, lots of Spanish 1 offerings, we can typically find one. Lots of Art 1 offerings, there's only one orchestra. And so students will have to make decisions depending on if their core is only offered on one day. Sometimes cores are offered on both days, and it's a little easier to schedule. But we really do try to put all the singletons in the beginning of the day or the end of the day on each of the days, because that's what provides the most flexibility for scheduling. So we really do think about that. And we will go through and we will pick random students and try to see if their schedules will work in what we're doing. And then we pick the, I want to take every AP course, kid. And we want to take the, I have to be in support and I need a learning center, kid, and try to see if their schedule work. But ultimately, with 1,600 kids, you're going to have a kid that picks that schedule where they picked every single singleton in the world, and they have to make the choice.
There's a report, if I can add.
Sure.
Our student information system, ARIES, actually produces a report called the conflict matrix.
Yeah.
And you can look at it to see that if a student chose the AP core, all those students that chose AP core, what else did they choose? All the students that chose Vineyard Academy, what else did they choose? And so it's not a stab in the dark about trying to make conflicts, appear or disappear. We use that to try to minimize the number of students who are going to be impacted by these singletons that conflict with something else. The counselors do a fantastic job of consulting with students, parents, and trying to assess the student's preferences. So if there is a conflict, they may ask the student, do you want Art 3 or do you want a different core? And
Can I back you up one step? What is the process for determining which courses we're offering before we even get there?
good question.
So what do we do?
So there's fewer offerings at the middle school. So I'll talk a little bit about that. Our students have the standard academics, grade level math, grade level English. We do offer some advanced levels for math and English in 7th and 8th grade. So there's a little bit of adjustment there, but the students are all taking PE, so the choice of electives is really like, what's the one thing you want to do to fill your schedule and what you're interested in. This year, all the 6th grade electives are year-long. We've had some reflection with the teachers and the students that it's too long. They don't want to stay in art all year long. They want something else. We've learned from some of that. And so next year, we're actually offering a rotation again. There has been a rotation in the past. So students can sample a variety of electives. And we're also working to build in some success skills work in one of those rotations. It'll also allow us to have a little bit better opportunity for students to move in and out of intervention. Because if they're changing the rotation every quarter, they can go into a rotation, into an intervention, and then there's an exit at the end of the quarter if they've made progress. So, and then they can move into electives easier. So that's happening for 6th grade next year, and that was a change from our structure for this year. 7th and 8th grade students take electives, And Brian's developed some really dynamic electives, and they are very popular and they feed into interests at the high school. So when you're talking about students having some interest that they don't just take once and then it's gone, there is some flow to these electives. There's actually some flow from fifth grade or from Brooks. They have a garden program and they have a cart that they can use to do cooking at the garden. And then we have a culinary program that was developed when Brian was at the middle school, and it's connected with the Vineyard Academy. And it happens to be our very most popular elective. We have a maker space that's been developed by the district that's also very popular. And the maker space also houses an elective that we now have that's construction based. It's an introductory construction for 7th and 8th grade. We have band, we have a strings class. One of the electives for 7th and 8th grade is a keyboarding class or a guitar class. So there's a variety of electives and a variety of interests that are served by the students. They also have after-school clubs that address other enrichments if they take an elective, but they have a different interest that they want to explore. Our 7th and 8th grade electives primarily, with some exceptions, are semester long. So the students actually get a chance to sample 2 electives, or in the course of 7th and 8th grade, 4 electives over the 2 years. So they're getting a chance to try to explore what those interests are. I know some of the items in the first bullet are really key because we are limited by credentialing and budgets and some of those aspects. Certainly was limited in even offering some of our current electives until space was renovated to house those electives. So those things go in. Right now, the students have just done a course selection for their elective, and they indicated 4 choices in order. So we'll have the ability to look and see what their first, second, and third and fourth choices are. Our year-long electives are in the music department. We have a year-long band, year-long strings, and then we have a culinary 2-level class that is a year-long class. And so not everything is a semester length, but some most of them are.
What makes the course gag cut, Brian? How does it happen?
So at the so we have sections and we have programs. And so currently in the areas that we offer programs, we have, dance, and then we have our performing, our theater, and then we have kind of our orchestra and band, and then we have our visual arts, and then we have digital arts. And so we look at, and many of those teachers can also teach different things. So we go through all of the students and we have them kind of give us their choices. And as Amy mentioned, we don't know, did they pick 8 courses? Some of them did. Did they pick 2 areas of one thing? So we won't know until we actually schedule them what our true numbers are, but we have kind of an idea. I'm rambling.
Okay, you're not rambling. You're fine. It's not it. But how do we even get to pick? How do the students get that course on there? So if there's 30 courses they have to choose from, how do those 30 courses make it so that that's what they get to choose?
I think
Who makes that call to eliminate, let's say, chorus? Why is that?
So typically we would not eliminate a course until after we got the student choice.
So we put them all on and then we see what interest is. So there's chorus on the list as an option.
We have not put course on the
Okay,
list.
that's what I'm trying to get at.
What about the 4-year
drives that?
plan? That kind of drives to what some of those kiddos are looking to request when the counselors present their course requests.
And I think that's a great point, Chris, because just because they're not going to get it next year, like they have many years, and a lot of them will, kind of push or find their fine art in their junior or senior year. So like we have a large number of seniors who are taking their fine art, which is great because we just had COVID. So that's definitely a course you want to take in person. So yes, so we put them on there, every course that we offer, and then we look. And so, unfortunately, innovative filmmaking has 6 kids, so that's a course that was recommended to be reduced. Art 1 had a number of requests, but we had a number of Art 1. And so the decision is we have to look at the programs then. Do we reduce sections in one area and offer more programs, or do we eliminate programs? And so that's kind of, working to try to get the 3 FTE reduction that I was asked to find. That was kind of what we had to go through and then make those hard decisions.
May I say something?
Yes.
So I really like all of the information that's being presented because it's making the picture more and more clear. So I really, really appreciate all of the information. But I think that there's one step that's missing, at least for me. I don't know if the rest of the board will agree with me. But I think the step for me that's missing is that I think that we need more events that are like career fair type of events, where we actually have professional artists come in and talk to the kids about how they made their career or how they made it in their career. Because I think if I'm 15 years old and somebody comes to me and says, oh, well, you have to set up your schedule in a way that you don't have a conflict. I think I'm going to prioritize not having a conflict versus this art course is going to change my life. They're not going to know that, right? So I think it's a lot of pressure for the kids without more mentoring. I feel like they could use more guidance and mentoring in this process of, how am I picking these classes? And also, who are my role models? Who am I going to look up to? What, career path do I want to aspire to based on these successful people that I'm meeting in the community?
Thanks, Mel. Amy had
Let me help with that. And this is back to my years of experience at the high school. So a CTE course needs a component of bringing industry partnerships into the classroom. And there are industry partners who are part of the advisory committees for each of the CTE areas. So those students have opportunities to meet people and hear from industry. They also, as part of senior and junior projects, have mentors from the industries when they're connected with those CTE pathways. So they get an experience of not just having a guest speaker come to the class, but field trips out to places of business and actually working for several hours with somebody side by side as their mentor. So the pathways at the high school do have lots of opportunities. There is also an annual career fair. It was a little more difficult during distance learning, but that happens in the spring, and a variety of industries. I think we've had up to 40 different careers come represented, and they set up in the gymnasium, and they have students come through all day long to talk with them and see exhibits from their businesses so that they get some experience with that. We're even doing that at the middle school. So our students are actually, I think Monday maybe, going to be Skyping with Guy Fieri. He's a big supporter of our culinary program. Students in years past have actually gone to the set and worked on the set of the grocery games. So they've been involved in seeing what the industry is doing, and not only that, but what the entertainment industry is doing. And so trying to bring people in. Our music program has had 2 different artists come in and speak to the students and play. And they are actually going on a field trip to go see Black Violin in the next couple of weeks. So we're trying to get students at all levels, high school and middle school, connected with students outside of their teacher to interact with people and see performances and hear about careers.
It's really, really important. I just feel like we really need a lot more of that, because especially at the middle school, I think is the place, because I think by the time they're a junior or senior, it's too late in the game. It has to happen much earlier. And I think the critical piece, as I mentioned before, is also having artists that look like them. Like, they need to see that representation and make that connection. That's really, really key to look at diversity. Very key.
The high school has a career center and a career counselor. The middle school doesn't. We have one academic counselor, but we're taking part of our library and setting it up as a career center. So that's very much a work in progress. It's been all year, but just to let students in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade start thinking about careers, colleges. There's college pennants up on the wall, and so that they're starting to think about their future, even though we want them, as has been mentioned, we want them to sample all sorts of things. And it's okay to not know what you're interested in at this point. That's part of our role, is to help them explore what that might be.
And down the road, because I know I don't want to jump ahead of Jeremy, because I know he's got something else planned. But I think I have a solution for what you're talking about, but I'll bring it up later.
If I could just quickly add, when Melissa Jones, she came and spoke at the last board meeting, and she made a really great point that VAPA is not interchangeable. Like, you have a visual arts, student, and you have a performing arts student, and you can't just pluck them from one and put them in the other and think that you're going to have the same experience. And so, like, we talk about chorus is, you put me in a chorus, I'll get through an art class and probably enjoy it. You put me in a chorus class, I'm standing in the back and I'm not opening my mouth the whole time. And that would not work for, I think, a lot of students. And so student interest, particularly in the visual and performing arts, in my mind, has to be the driver, because they're not interchangeable, and you have to connect with their passions and put them in courses. And yes, there's so much room for exploration and to find that passion that you didn't know you had. But we really have to kind of decide, are we basing on programs? Or are we basing it on?
Let's explain the crux of the issue here.
With that in mind, Brian, I was going to ask the board if you guys could do this, take 1 minute, or while we're talking, just look at this right here. And just yourself, if you were at Windsor High School, you guys are at Windsor High School, which of these electives would you take? Just so as we're talking, just look at this and just say.
Well, I don't think that's a fair question, because I was saying that the emphasis should be on the kids and what their interests are,
No.
not what my interests are.
I understand. I'm just curious as to which ones we each would take if we were at Windsor High School. So you don't have to. I'm just curious as to what each of us would take, because I think you would find that we would each take different things.
But here's the
I
crux
think
of the
that
issue,
you're right.
guys. The crux of the issue, though,
Right.
is we have these course offerings, and there's interest in why are we here? We're here because of the meeting that we had, and we were discussing arts. Great. So we talked about fine arts. There's interest in fine arts, but I will tell you what drove our decision making to bring the recommended reduction to you was making sure we retained programs. So by doing that, we decided to run courses that are nowhere near filled. And I want to give you some numbers just so you have them. So, well, you should do it that way. Because I'm sure some of these are combined.
So for Art 1, there was 191 students that requested it. For Art 2, there was 37. For Art 3, there was 13. And for AP Studio Art. So when you have a number like 37, then you have to make choices. Are you running a large course of 32, or are you running 2 low courses, 37 split in half? And that's going to take another spot. So there's a lot of give and take with all of this. Digital photo had 60. So that would be typically, and then advanced digital photo had 3. So those courses are taught together. So it'd be 63 divided by 2.
A lot of interest in the arts right there. So, but then we get to the performing arts and it's a little bit different.
And these are also the raw request numbers. At this point, it's not possible in the master schedule to know if some of a group of 37 students, 4 or 5 of them may automatically have a conflict.
Yeah.
And so it's not necessarily trying to find room for 37 students.
But it becomes more of a conflict when you make it one section of 32 than if you make
Correct.
two sections of 18.
Singleton,
Yes.
Because then the conflict opens up much more dramatically. That matrix won't have so many conflicts if there's 2 sections of art.
It does, and we're challenged with the staffing.
Right.
Yeah.
I totally get,
Yeah.
that's what I do every year. And
Less singletons is a
struggle with that
master
even more.
schedule's friend.
And so intermediate and advanced art that runs together is at 12. So that's like you have to make the decision. Are you running, that class at 12? Broadcast journalism 1 and 2 is at the 40, which is great. But we're not
Each class or
40 total. So then you're either cutting, 8 kids, or you're running 2 low sections. Drumline is at 10. Band is at 18. String
And the caps on those are 38 students
Yes.
in class.
String orchestra is at 20. Professional theater 1 and 2, which runs together, is at 23. And so kind of as we're going through this, it's what can we fill? What can we make sure that we're offering at that high level? Because I absolutely agree that you need to have some level 3/AP courses for those kids who are going to take this all the way through. Those courses are going to run a little bit low. And I think that's fine.
The kind of direction I'm hoping for from you guys here is to Bill's point earlier, really, is pick our things and we do them well. But there are certain things that there's not interested. So we're going to look at, I just look at the drum line. It's 10 students. We're running that course, right? We're running it because we felt like it was the board's intention to maintain programs and to not reduce offerings to students in terms of program, not courses. But if we're going just based on student interest, then we would not have those, and then we'd have more fine arts. So I think we need to kind of understand, I need to understand, how you'd prefer us to look at these offerings, I guess, and what we do.
If you don't mind, the dilemma I come across with that statement is that, and I'm not at all against these programs, don't take it the wrong way, but 5 years ago, we didn't have junior high culinary, we didn't have the build program at the high school. Those were just said, this is what we're doing now. The board didn't get to say yes or no to those. It was done. Grants were coming in, donations were coming in, rooms were being renovated. Great, we love those things. But with that happening, reductions were made other places to count for those FTEs. And I love the build program. I'm on the advisory board for the build program. My son was in STEM. I don't want STEM to go away. All these different things are wonderful. But again, choices and finances have to commingle a bit. We have to decide where we're going to be best, or if we're going to let things slip. Not slip maybe, but make choices to not offer
Active choices.
whether it's arts or cores or whatever else. We've got more cores now than we've ever had, but we have fewer students. So that's another issue. We're not ready to have that discussion today.
That is the issue, Eric.
We're not ready to dive that deep right now. I don't want to do it at 7:00 at night on a Thursday at the end of the meeting here. But
so I want to get to having you guys. I want to get to having you guys talk. But I think you understand that it's a tough one to decide how to go about this. And I have some ideas that I could pitch to you, meaning we could bring the course guide to you before you could approve the courses that are going to be even offered to kids ahead of time. And then you could say, no, we're not offering that. And then it doesn't get to be in the master schedule. Or you could put in the board policy that we're going to have more arts required, more fine arts credit required to graduate than is required by the state. I mean, there's lots of different things that you can do.
I have a question I'd like to ask the board, because it kind of goes to the point that Eric just made or just brought up. And that is this: as times change and as things evolve, where is and I'm not even sure if I'm saying this right, we seem to be eliminating the competition part of our education experience. I could use this example. We're trying to, and this is not about arts, but let's just use this example. We have always had buggy whip manufacturing as a class ever since we've been in school. But now we're going, well, hey, we don't have as many people interested in buggy whip making anymore.
What is a buggy whip?
Something that's old fashioned.
Okay, fair enough. Got it. All right.
Think Oregon.
Just sorry. Fair enough. Man, I'm not going to be able to follow this direction.
But my point is, we don't need a lot of buggy whips anymore.
Right.
So when the build program came up, I did hear a little murmuring from somebody. Well, wait a minute, that's going to be taking kids out of my class.
True. Yeah.
And I'm thinking like, we don't, but what are you, and this is maybe just where I come from, the business environment. What are you doing to entice kids to be in your class? Look, I mean, I know I just relate things to my own experience. When I got hired to be the wrestling coach, I had to beg all the freshman kids that came in, we got one class, and I got one kid that would come out and wrestle. And I worked so hard to get kids to come out. And then I got a couple more and a couple more. And this goes to your point a little bit more. You got to have people that are driving certain interests. And if you don't have people driving that interest, you're not going to have much of it. And so, why do kids do extra things after school? A lot of times because their parents are driving them. I was not interested in tap dancing at all. My mom drove it into us, and she drove us to the place, and Marion Moore taught us. So if we are going to have a really robust arts program, we need to have someone who is going to be our driver Who is-
But can I challenge you, Rich?
Sure.
I need to challenge you because this is the problem. So do we restrict what we even allow students to potentially take? Or do we give all the options and you got to fight for your program and build it? And if your program doesn't get picked, then we eliminate it. That is the crux of the issue here.
That's
So, and I think you need, as a board, you need to give us direction on what we need to do, because I'm hearing everything all over the map right now, and we have to decide how we're gonna go about doing this. Because right now, let's go to the middle school. Let's say we offer art, band, culinary, and maker. And let's say there's no interest in, let's just say band, because we talked about band. Let's say there's no interest in band, but there's lots of interest in the other things. Do we plant our flag in those other things and then we cut band? I don't anticipate that you would say that.
Well, that is part of the problem, is that is not the right question to ask, I think, what you're asking.
Okay,
Because I think that what I was suggesting earlier is that as a board, we need to look at our strategic plan for the arts, right? And then as part of that strategic plan, we need to look at what resources currently exist in Sonoma County that our school district can take advantage of. How can teachers connect to local resources to look at, like, how can we really bolster music? How can we bolster, photography? How can we bolster, the fine arts? And really look at, having this relationship of looking at it like 50% of, student interest plus 50% of, the teachers guiding, that process, and also working with us, as far as helping to identify local resources. Because as an example, I get invited a lot to other school districts in Sonoma County to go talk about how I became a professional filmmaker. And to be honest, like recently, because I've been so busy, I keep turning down these speaking opportunities. But what that tells me is that there is interest out there. I just personally haven't been able to, manage all of those speaking opportunities, but I know that it's there. And also I know that from being on the Public Arts Commission here for the town of Windsor, I know that there's a lot of interest in the arts, but I feel like we're not connecting all of these dots, which would be a balance of local resources plus, what the teachers' specific skill sets are and what they're able to teach and the curriculum that they're able to design. And then, sort of like funneling that to the students' interests.
can I
That makes
ask,
sense.
can I ask you one more question? And I'm trying to get direction, right? So I can make good decisions here and give my proper guidance. So strategic arts plan, I've heard that. There are other, where does maker fall in that? Where does computer science fall in that? Where does exercise science fall in that? Those are kind of elective courses as well. So how do we decide, are we just going to focus our attention before high school on arts and eliminate culinary and maker? Because we're talking a lot about the arts, which I understand, but I guess I need to know how we're going to make this decision on what we offer.
When
I don't think we've gotten
when the students, and Amy, when the students send in what they are interested in, do the parents sign off on that?
So at the high school, the parents are actually the ones, because their login that selects the courses.
Okay.
And in the past, we've had parents sign.
It's been an online process and it's only been available through the Aries parent portal. So if a parent gives their login to their student, we don't have any way to know that, but we're assuming the parent then says, okay, go do this. But parents, we'd ask the parent to log in with their student and help to choose classes. They can see it through their Aries portal for the high school. For the middle school, we had it on a Google form and we had the student indicate who in their family was helping them with this process.
So there's a high degree, most likely, of parental involvement in the kids.
Right, and the parent will always, whatever the parent says is what's going to go on the. So the kid can put something, but the parent will call and say, no, I want something else.
The reason why I asked that is because I wanted to know, is this something that just the kids are driving or the parents? Because sometimes a lot of parents, we as parents, we aspire for our children to do maybe more than our kids might want to do naturally themselves. And so it sounds like we have good parent participation in that course picking. So.
And there's a lot of information that goes out to parents to encourage them to talk with their student and sending links to course catalogs and sending links to making a counseling appointment so they can talk with their academic counselor. We just did a big presentation to Brooks families last night. So we had parents involved and,
So I'm
Q&A. So there, yes, we do want parents involved. I was going to just make, if I can, make a comment from something Rich said, and that is, are we setting up marketing classes or marketing something so that it's a competition? And I don't know that it's healthy to have teachers and students feeling like they needed to market a class and make it competitive. That's for some, in some way that a student has to talk up their program and convince other people to join it. We want students to explore. We want students to know what they're choosing. So from the marketing aspect, I think that, maybe I misunderstood, but to, have a day where you display what your core does or what your elective does so that students can make an informed choice, as opposed to feeling like somebody's convincing them to take this. And we want them to explore what their interests are.
No, it was more along the line of what Mel and Ali said about having opportunities to expose
Yes.
people to, I'm looking at some of these offerings right here. And I don't think I could explain what each one of these are really super well.
The high school does like to name things fancy things that don't exactly explain what they are.
Right.
I agree with you, Rich.
And so I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, are some of these kind of duplicative or not? So if I was a parent, I might think a certain thing, or if I was a kid. So, I like your idea of maybe we have throughout the year and whatever, we kind of are explaining, or we're going to showcase, certain things so people are more aware of them. Amy, I understand what you're saying, but yeah, I do actually.
Well, can I?
Oh, sure.
I want to back us out of the conversation at this point. I
Okay.
want you guys to talk, and we're here to answer questions, but I think that conversation with Amy should happen with you guys at this point,
Okay.
because ultimately you need to give us direction.
Right.
And you need to have the opportunity to have this conversation. I think we've given you lots of information and it's enough. It's time for you guys to probably talk things through.
So I do want to say something because I have deep concerns for how students pick their classes. And I understand the whole piece about how parents are involved and they log into Aries. I get all of that because I went through that process myself. But where my deep concerns are that we have lots of kids whose parents did not go to college, do not have a high level of education, and they're going to have a more challenging time understanding, this like course selection process, as well as why certain classes should be prioritized for their child over other ones. They're going to have a very difficult time if they didn't graduate high school, So for example, my parents did not graduate high school, so I was kind of on my own, and I just, tried to do the best that I could. But I have deep concerns over like how that process unfolds.
One thing that might alleviate that concern is, again, what I mentioned a little bit ago regarding the counselors and their role, right? And their role in identifying the 4-year plan that best suits the student where they are, and then revisiting it each year. I think that's really important. And the way I see kind of the vertical articulation, the continuum of how you get to a comprehensive high school and how you prepare kids to pursue their passions is you're exposing them to a lot of different offerings that align with the offerings in the course system and the CTE programs that we have at the high school. And I think that's what I'm hearing as a new person to the district. We've kind of moved more in that direction, especially, which is indicative of the different offerings at the middle school that align to some of the cores and the CTE pathway programs at the high school. There's 15 industry sectors in the career and technical education realm. And what the state's trying to do is really target programs to focus on preparing kids for high wage, high demand industries in your local regions. They fund you based on that. They prioritize that. So I just wanted to throw that all out there for you guys to think about in terms of that process. And if we're doing it well, we're exposing kids from TK to 5 to a variety of different things. Gets a little more focused, 6, 7, 8. Then they're with their counselors. We do a 8th grade orientation so that we can educate parents as to what the different requirements are. We're very clear and deliberate with that. We share that information. We walk parents through and make sure they understand if maybe they didn't have that college experience. And then we revisit that 4-year plan throughout their careers. At least that's my philosophy on it. I know that we're doing a lot of that currently.
I think one thing, Jeremy, I know you wanted
I
to
want to
talk,
back
but,
out it. So,
but there's also, we didn't talk about, there's 4 cores that are arts based, 2 in the 9-10 and 2 in the 11-12. And that's where a lot of the students are who are exploring go into those cores. But the number one, more than their parents, the number one driver for course selection is peers. And so that's kind of, that has to be put in the equation too of when they're selecting. It's what are you taking? What did you take? What did my brother take? What did my sister take? So 6 years ago, when I came to this district, completely unrelated to me showing up, we've been in declining enrollment ever since.
Or maybe it is related. We don't know.
This happened to me when you got here, Brian.
So every single year, the driver from on high down was get enrollment up, get enrollment up, get enrollment up. The only way that I know how to get enrollment up is student interest and attractive programs that bring people to this district. And so that's been the driver all the way through. That's been my North Star. That's why we've made every decision we've made since I got here.
All right, we're done. We've done enough talking. It's time for you guys to really talk this thing through together.
So board, I'd like to hear from you, Bill, on this issue. Tell me what if you could wave a magic wand, how you would like to see everything in the arts area. How would you like to craft it?
I'll answer a different question first.
Sure.
Process-wise, are we talking about anything to start in August? Because that ship has sailed already, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you need a little guidance for us on our.
We're talking more long-term.
I think that's the piece that we need to set up a way to have a conversation about this. Because I get it. That's what you've heard. I think we have lost our way, that enrollment needs to drive things. It has made us lose our way. In my soul, I say that. So I think we need to figure out a process by which to do this.
Sir,
This is
that's
a
what
nice way to put some heartfelt information on the table. But we have a strategic visual and performing arts plan. I believe we should increase the art requirement at the high school. I'd like to have an art thing for every student every year, something, starting in the upper grades, starting in 6th grade all the way to 12th grade. That means other things go out of the way. It might mean that we invest in 0 periods, right? But if it's important, we should do it. If we decide it's not important because we've shifted to something else, I'd like that to be deliberate, because this seems to be reactive. And it's a way to do it. I'm not, that's why so it seems to be reactive, and it's like the consequence that ended up how we're doing it, not because we've had a vacuum of board policy. Our governance team, including the superintendent, has been a vacuum to not give guidance on it. And I think that's where we need to do. But I think we need to look at these other issues, right? We need to look at build and maker. And to get a sense to say, all right, is that the reason we've had basically an atrophy of our musical programs at both the middle school and the high school, which is what my experience would be from we were there 10 or 12 years ago. They've atrophied. I think there are other things that have come in, but I don't know that was based on a deliberate process. And I think, to me, it's an area, and it's not that art needs to be in front of that, but I think art's been left out of the equation. And the reason is there is not a visual and performing arts coordinator. There's not a VAPA person at your staff up here that serves that function for district articulation. And we have seen that atrophy in this area, where there is that for CTE. There is that with the North Bay Builders Association for Build. There is that from the Sexiness of Makerspace. So what I'd like to see is sort of figure out what's our mechanism to develop whatever data we might need about how we got here, and to get a sense of what manner of flexibility, and maybe that flexibility isn't even in the 23-24 school year yet. Because all of a sudden, if we're going to alter, right, we had it with math with that very good presentation about that. I mean, this is a multi-year, it's half a generation to change the math requirements. But I'd like us to look at those things. I am in my soul. I think we have too many cores at the high school. I get belonging. I don't know that we haven't gone too far. I don't know that we're perfect, but it just has sort of happened, to Eric's sense, right? And I think from the process to look at programs, because I think the programs and priorities need to come from the school board and the governance team, which to me is the principles. I mean, it's that level of.
Yes, sir.
And
the directors that are not here tonight.
Right. But then it's, I don't know if it's 40% or 60%, then there is a student interest piece. But I think we are abandoning our fiduciary duty to our students and our families by not at least going through to say deliberately, we have had this sort of range of programs, and out of that, I don't even really worry too much about the courses. I think if we start to get into courses, we are micromanaging.
Yeah, I don't want to.
Right. So from a program standpoint, I think you're exactly right. I mean, you guys are doing the best you can because we haven't given any guidance, because we haven't had this conversation for 5 years, other than when are we going to we're going to have a visual and performing arts plan. Why don't we have a halftime equivalent? Well, we've heard a lot of different things why we didn't. So I think that process of how to evaluate this, very fair, but it's a long-term adjustment. Some of these things are maybe not as long-term. And so I don't think it all needs to be, I hate process. I hate it. I like results. And here's why, right? While we're working through the perfect process and deliberate thing, a kid's high school career is going to evaporate. Right. A kid is not going to have that 3rd, 4th, 5th grade experience and sparking and, rotation. So I think in my mind, I say, well, we'll have to sort out the high school. I would focus our attention on 3rd through 6th grade. What are we doing to grab those kids? And if there is something we need to be looking at from priorities, because that's where you make that difference. Our 8th graders, God bless them, they're going to get what they're going to get, and we can make some modest adjustments, as you know, in the course. But I think the mapping out how we do this and where we want to spend the time as a board, right, to give this, because I don't think we should give guidance on everything, but I think we need to revisit this writ large because we haven't. And I think it's come up in part of, I don't know, it's frustrating. Part of the ownership, I mean, I look at my friend to my right here, part of the ownership Eric and I need to have is we have lost our way in providing strategic priorities. We've just lost our way. And we kept going, right? And we were doing fine. And the district is very well run and innovative. But I would imagine from the perspective of your site administrators, I was like, well, why are you interested in this also? Not that we're not, and that's not the wrong word. Why are you muddling in this? Because we haven't gotten guidance from the school board, right? And so I think it's a broader discussion, right? We have a certain structure of a certain way that we teach and what's available. Again, I don't know if we have too many cores, not enough cores, the right perfect number of cores, but I do know I agree with Eric. It has happened without a prioritization and say, okay, what's the cost benefit of this? Every one of these is an opportunity cost, right? And so that's sort of where I am, right? But I think, we don't have a strategic plan for programs, right? We have sort of something about math now. We have, intervention. We have a visual and performing arts strategic plan that at least is a starting point that I suggest we dust it off and look at it and say, over the next 6 or 8 months, figure out a mechanical way to do that, to evaluate what do we want to do with that. But I think that conversation now is, and compared to Maker and Culinary and Build as 3 things that have come up in 5 or 6 years. Vineyard was there, but it's reached down into the lower grades, which is a good thing, I think. Because the devil's in the details. I mean, how do we even start the discussion? Sure. But I think we either need to get out of the way as the board and say, you pros can do this, and this is fine, and we're doing all right. Or we need to identify collectively with you, what are some areas that some program insight and guidance would be good?
Be great at,
right? What do we want to be great at? And I think to me, it would be purposefully perhaps looking at not only this list, but, thank you for sending out the course catalog from high school to say, yeah, maybe we start philosophically to say 50% of those classes got to go, or, we don't offer them, or are they the right numbers of classes, right? And so Are we, because we just do what we do now, and I'm not entirely clear how we got there, based on what criteria and what priorities. And that's very unfair to you. I know. I mean, student interest, I get it. I know we haven't asked the parents. We haven't asked our constituents who pay the taxes. Hey, if we're going to have a stakeholder process over 6 months, what do they want for their school district? Sure. Now, we got to be careful because you ask them and people say it, and they
And then
expect
they
to
expect to do
listen
it.
to them.
Yeah.
But we haven't done that, right? We haven't done that for a decade or more. So that's kind of where I am. And it's not to really answer what would we like on this list. I kind of agree with Mally. I think that's the wrong approach. It's, do we want to look at this? Do we want to get out of your way and say, cool, we'll just, tell us if you need more or less money.
Right.
I think there's a sweet spot there to get some priorities, and that the board, the governance team, which again, I put you on, but then also your direct reports, and that other 8 or 10 people who are helping run the subsidiary parts of the corporation, to start the process to say, where could this be most effective? Where is there a need? Are we dancing on the head of a pin about the wrong thing? We might be. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Bill, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Wouldn't right sizing the high school pay for your entire K-5 music program?
If we have a K-5 music program, in 10 years, it's going to be 8 sections at the high school. And then what do we do?
But that's actually the point that I wanted to get to.
Yes, I think to answer your question, and I'm not looking at this year, next year. I'm looking at that 3rd grader for when that 3rd grader is now an 11th grader. And I think if you had 300 kids who wanted music in the high school, we would have built that. And just as an example, right? It could be 300 kids want to do digital photography or art, 1 or 2. Yes, and I think that's the place to make the investment. I said 3 through 6, maybe it's even a little earlier, because I think there's the arts integration piece, which kind of gets that at least interest. But there's a ripple effect. And to my mind, it should be, we're going to have a program discussion, and we are doing a 10 or 15 year trajectory for the district, much like when we talk about facilities now. But yeah, I think it would, if that's where we want to go, right? I still am not sure collectively amongst my contemporaries here, if that's the solution, but there's 10 other good solutions, and we maybe got money for 3 or 4 or 5 of them. And if we get outside money, we could do another one. Well, that's a different question all of a sudden, Brian. It's like, well, we know that build and culinary and maker is occupying a lot of people's energy and enthusiasm and excitement, right? That's working. It may be that's the natural evolution that we even get the horseless carriages. I went out to get some.
I learned what something about
But, I don't know if that answers your question, Brian, because I think it would. But my point is that may be a hot topic for right now. I'm not sure in having to weigh when we have 10 absolutely marvelous meritorious programs, we can afford 5 or 6. What should those be? And that's where I have this problem of, well, we'll see about student interest, because that works, except that chorus is atrophy, right? There isn't student chorus interest for chorus because it's not offered. Well, it's not offered because there wasn't student interest. It's not offered because there's not a
We
halftime.
never used to have guitar. Now we've got 3 sections of it.
Yeah. So
Not good or bad.
I think those are all good points, but to me, that's where the process might come.
That's what we're.
Because I think we can maybe use this issue of visual and performing arts, balancing these other, successful, vibrant initiatives. You've got maker, culinary, build, the other one, yeah. And to say, look, we have X capacity,
Yes.
right? Are we doing the right things? Because we know we're occupying a lot of time doing those, and that's doing well. I don't know what the answer is. I know we haven't sat down to study it, to give that guidance. We haven't articulated it to our community to ask them.
Mhm.
Right. And I think those are 2 important things that we have the bandwidth to do it, are probably valued. From a joy and creativity part, I'll go back there. I think there is a piece of arts and engagement that maybe build and culinary are right, and maker, right, are doing that, right? That joy to come in. And maybe I need to expand my perspective on that a little bit, because if that's floating the boats of kids and they love doing that aspect of it, and I hate to, badmouth English or math teachers, but if that's challenging for them, but you know what, boy, they sure want to get that maker time 3 days a week.
But sorry.
No,
If you're in build and you're taking the construction class, you're still taking a fine art.
Right.
It's a graduation requirement. You're gonna take it. And we have always, well, not, oh, yeah, Amy said, we have always, it's like, if you want an extra class on top of that, like normally we limit it to 6, 6, 5, 5. If you've got room in the art class, we're gonna add it on your schedule if you want to take the progression. We've always.
and with that example, I would say take 4 years of art. I would just say take 4 years of art. If I had,
There's
if I
a
was
ripple effect of grad requirements and keeping kids who need to have progressions for getting into colleges. I mean, that is.
I get it. So
See, here.
But I
if
love
if
the
I
No,
jump
no,
in. So I like the word investment. I'm actually, tonight, I'm asking myself this question. What, when I was younger, we started off playing the little recorders. You started learning how to read the music, and I think that was 2nd or 3rd grade.
That's still happening.
Right. So, I mean, so that was kind of, there was a little bit of a progression that was going along that way. I'm wondering out loud if some of the reason why we're maybe not having as many kids playing instruments is because the fact that they can do all that stuff digitally now. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if that might
There's some
be,
conversation around that.
if there's something swapping one out for the other. I would just say that for me, just philosophically, I would like to invest something in those younger grades to start over and say, hey, look, honestly, I gave this example. Why did I run for the board? I said, because I thought our district was going like this for a long time, and then I thought we kind of went like this. I could almost put that the same with our music program, our arts program, that we kind of gone like this. Maybe things are getting exchanged for other things, as my buggy whip example might be. I don't know the answer to that. I just know that for me, my kids coming up, my grandkids coming up, I want them to have the opportunities in our schools to learn music, because I think that learning music develops so many other aspects of their brain, their personalities, and those kind of things. That could be an old way of doing things. I don't know, but that's kind of an expectation for me. And so I'm like, but like my youngest daughter, Kaylee, she's only been out of high school now 2 or 3 years. She played with all kinds of kids in band in the middle school. They came to high school, really nothing. And I'm thinking, like, as a coach, I see all those 7th and 8th grade kids wrestling. Man, I'm gonna have a great team in high school. Then all of a sudden they don't show up. Why? So if we had all those kids in junior high playing instruments, why did they not continue their musical career in the high school? I don't know the answer to that. Part of my solution to that is, and maybe I'm wrong, I'm just throwing this out there, because we don't have somebody driving it. Who in our district gets up in the morning at 5 o'clock and can't wait to get to the school district to gather the kids together and provide all these musical opportunities for these kids? What's that?
Heather Collin.
There may be, I mean,
Yeah.
okay, Heather, but who's the head coach? Who's the driver of that program? And I don't think we have that person in that capacity or acknowledge, or we don't have a stipend for them or something. Maybe we do. I just don't feel like we do, not like we do with certain other things too. So are we going to invest in the music for our young kids as just one part of the arts? Are we going to invest in music and see if it follows through? Because I'm never going to get my marching band if we don't. I mean, it won't ever happen. So, and that's just one sliver of the arts. The thing with VAPA, I don't know if that's even the right acronym, because I don't know amongst the board, I don't know if amongst the schools, I don't know if amongst all our parents and students, how many are really interested in the visual arts? How many are more interested in the performing arts? I think we need to do a little bit of a deep dive of what actual arts is it that we're really interested in, that we kind of want to sponsor, that we kind of want to promote, that we kind of want to develop, that we kind of, like you said, let's have, instead of 10 things, let's have 3 things. What are those 3 things, or whatever it is that we can afford? Because at the end of the day, it's all a trade-off. We only have so many dollars that we can put forward. And so,
I think Bill made a strong statement earlier about program. Essentially, what I hear us describing is a program strategic plan. What are we gonna, where, there's 15 industry sectors, correct? And it seems like that's the umbrella because it's everything. And then we drill down which ones we're really going to offer at the high school, and then drill down further which ones we're going to plant our flag in the middle, and then drill down even further which ones we're going to plant our flag at the elementary. And it seems like we need to do some sort of engaged process with our community to determine what makes the most sense to plant our flag in.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm hearing a lot of you guys say. I don't think we can have a quick fix here and you can say, here's your direction. I think there's a process that needs to go into a strategic plan, but I don't know if it's a strategic VAPA plan or if it's a strategic program plan.
We have such an amazing comprehensive high school. One thing I worry about, Santa Rosa City Schools, 5 high schools, what they did 15 years ago was they developed magnet
Yeah,
programs.
exactly.
They specialized so that they each had a significant
And then
draw.
opened up so everybody can go.
And they
right.
opened up their enrollment, so 8th graders had to declare, and it really gave kids a focused area of programs. We have a little bit of everything, and I think it's really eloquently written in this marketing.
Yeah, I
statement.
didn't go through this because we were getting a little late,
Yeah.
but Heather is working on her marketing plan for the district. And so I just gave one of her examples that she's going to bring to you next week. But I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so it was an interesting take on our school. And she kind of, I mean, feel free to read it. It would take you a couple minutes, but it really was all about,
Yeah.
we have something for everybody.
And if
That
we
was
start
the
to
concept.
narrow, I love the idea of keeping your playbook small and doing a few things really, really well. But if we start limiting what we offer, will we lose students?
Yeah,
to
I
other
don't know if I
schools?
like that
Yeah.
plan, because I think that one point that I keep hearing a lot tonight is that we need more data, because part of the question, at least for me, is how do we know what we know? Like, how do we know
Yeah.
that some kids are more interested in band versus photography? Like, I don't know that unless we have some sort of mechanism to gather that data. And I think that we need to also become more data driven in this process of, creating these classes. So.
Beyond student interest is what I'm hearing now, because we do
So-
like,
So yes, but also we talked about how do we gauge the parent interest as well? Like,
Mhm.
we don't know that. So I think that we need more to compile more data.
Okay.
So I think that is, for me, at least one of the things that we need to become better at, because otherwise we're sort of just like shooting from the hip, like, oh, I think we need this class, but maybe we don't need this class over here, but it's sort of just all over the place.
I have a thought too. We participated in the county's initiative to develop the portrait of a graduate and what that looks like countywide. And I've been inspired to learn that districts are doing their own portrait of a graduate.
that's the thing.
That could help drive our discussion because
It is the discussion.
yeah. Just on
but
that.
I'd almost take that to the parent, say, okay, you've got a kindergartner right here. Tell me how you want that kindergarten to look when they're graduating from high school. What is it you wanted them to get out of that experience for the next 12 years in our school district? Do you want them playing an instrument? Do you want them learning how to, what is it you want them to get out of our school? I'd be kind of curious if we did some sort of not a poll, but a survey of some sort and say, more with the younger parents, but all the parents, but just kind of look at it and say, hey, because really that's what we're here for. We're here to make sure that the parents, kids get out of this what they want. And we're assuming that we know what they want. To your point, I think I know what most parents want. I think we all think we know what most parents want our kids to get out of it, their career and education. But, it in a little bit, as I was talking earlier, the thought occurred to me, maybe in our town, not that many parents are really as interested in their kids learning to play an instrument as I am for them. It's a possibility. It never even occurred to me until
Well, we don't
tonight.
know.
That's the
That is the
portrait
point
of
that we don't
So,
know.
Yeah, it is.
But we do, because they pick the
We engage the
courses
students.
for
Right,
their
but
students.
again, I just want to reiterate my point that I do have concerns about parents
Yeah.
that have not been educated, especially here in the US, that may not understand this process.
So
And
for the
I-
last 3 years, every 6th grader took a music class. I gave them, here's your 3 choices, pick one of them, because we were able to run a double elective. For the last 3 years I was at the middle school, I tried to put in a full double elective schedule, into the middle school so that they could take the other offerings, but then also be able to maintain Avid and because that program is going down too at the middle school because of all the offerings. So coming up with a viable solution to have, a double elective program at the middle school, you're going to the culinary program, you're making a cake, you're eating it too. Like you can have everything. So I think we're
It just
just,
costs more money.
But taking a more
Yeah.
global perspective as far as programs, like understanding how that flows, I think might be worth actually having a workshop for parents to explain that. Because of course, they're going to understand like, oh yeah, my child is in band, for example, or my child is learning an instrument. They'll understand that, but the flow of these like programs and how that fits in with their, college prep classes as well.
I guess we feel like we do that. We give the parent nights. We do several of them. We really push the arts. I mean, there's not a kid in this district that can't take a music class. We have room for every single kid to take a course, but they're not choosing them because they want to take other things.
And
No one's
maybe
being
we're
denied the
offering
opportunity.
too many other things. Maybe we're offering, if, for example, instrumental music is an important thing, and we're going to say that's important, maybe the consequence of that is we offer less other things and say, we're not going to have 20 people in orchestra, we're going to have 75 in orchestra or whatever, right? So that's why I don't buy, frankly, the student interest, right? The student interest is a culmination of some years, and they have many other things. It's not a criticism, but I don't think that's the determinative that we have done it, because I don't know that this board has even crafted or articulated a policy that we're all right with whatever percentage has happened over 30% drop in number of sections of arts. It's what has happened. But so I think we are where we are, and here's how, that could be the factor. I'm not saying it is or isn't, but I don't think it's the answer, because I think what this board needs to do is, to the extent that it is useful, right, but also meets the needs that we feel as the fiduciaries, right? Because I think we are a voice for the parents, but again, if the parents have a different view, they can run and take the seats if our view is not their view. I mean, I think we're not a pure democracy in that regard. So I just think we need to step up, frankly, Brian, and we're having a good, frank conversation here, but I think decide where should we spend our time, and we may be at the perfect sweet spot right now, right? But I think we need to deliberately decide that, as opposed to, I look at this and wonder, how did we get here? What has happened?
Right.
We sat years ago and I thought, well, oh my God, what happened when we weren't paying attention?
Well,
There's other students,
Yeah.
so-
Amy put this together and did an awesome job in the last second. But I think we also would need to go down and put the seat count next to each one of these sections. So when we're talking about
That's true.
reduction,
Yes.
Very true.
these sections were not running full.
Yes, absolutely.
I want to give you a perfect example. And I
Yes,
can-
that would be helpful.
And I can speak to this because I was a drummer. When you told me there's only 10 kids in the drum line, I'm like going, well, first off, why do we have a drum line class all by itself? And I'm a drummer and I want the drums. But when I went through school, little, all the way through college, our drummers, we were all in the band class.
Right.
We played in the band. So I'm thinking, why was that separated out from band and advanced band? Because the drummers
Drum
always
line.
played with them.
Club or
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. The drum line is an extracurricular club after school where they just focus that. But it also is more of at the high school level, you're only going to have so many people that drum. I think when I was in school, we had, about 8 or 9 kids that played the drums. We didn't have our own separate class. Now, when we got into college, you took 6 kids from that high school, 6 kids from that high school, you put them all together. Now you had a drum line that had about 50 kids in it. Different thing because of the scale that you were able to produce. So when I'm looking at this, I'm thinking like, if I was king for the day, I'd say, hey, you guys, that class is gone. That's a club, and you're in with the band and the other. I wouldn't do that,
But
and I wouldn't think I'm cutting art.
But we would, because we would cut a 0.2 FTE.
There's a
From a
teacher in
position.
place on that.
And
No, I understand. I'm not even referring to it as the FTE part. I'm talking about the interest or the size of the class
I
and
know,
the
But there's a ramification to that.
Sure there
Because you're then
Sure.
making somebody a 0.8 because we are going to move that, and then somebody,
Or they're being put to teach Avid or to teach
Correct.
art.
Or
to
something
teach
else.
Or some
Yeah.
other kind of music.
Correct.
right,
Right.
or
So-
some other kind of music
Yeah.
class.
And then I just have one last thing about the whole thing, and then I can be quiet for a little bit. The build program, the whole reason why I wanted to get behind that and push it was because I asked our very first principal about the third year we had Windsor going. And I said, why are our test scores low? And they go, oh, because they're just not focusing on it. And I felt morally over the years, I kept watching certain scores not improving to the point where we were having about half of the kids failing in certain areas. And I felt like it was immoral for us to be taking their money and not providing an opportunity for those kids to do something they were interested in, that they would also excel in. And I mean, one of my own sons was not too interested in his academics. And he and I got into it one night, and I just said, hey, look, if you want to start your career digging ditches, you can do that tomorrow. You do not need to graduate from high school to dig a ditch. You can do that right now. And I said, so if you don't want to dig a ditch, and I said, and I know you think that's cool right now because you go out and make some money, but when your back starts giving out when you're in your 30s, you're not going to be too excited about it. So you better start studying a little bit more. And he kind of got the hint and whatever, and he's doing well. He's still in construction, but he started focusing on some of the academic aspects of it too. And that's why a lot of the build program for me is really important, because it creates that nexus between the work and also the academic side of it. So people understand how the two go together.
But there was no process for us coming through the board to create that program, which is, I think, ultimately the discussion that we're having. We decided to run it. We think it's great. I'll be honest. I think it's a great
Well,
program.
I think we nodded our heads to
That's what it went to
support
the
it. I don't
board.
want to think it
Yeah.
happened in the dark and we didn't know.
No,
But,
right.
you know, there wasn't this level of discussion.
Yeah,
Right.
we
The
didn't
point of a
consider
zero-sum game,
Ramifications or something.
you know, what are the consequences of doing that? And this is one of the first times I've seen, look, there is a consequence. And that, again,
it's just. an
I'm not
example, but yeah.
predetermining that this is the bad consequence, but I know we haven't talked through how we got here and why.
Sure.
And I think that's something, looks like something you're interested in getting
Yes,
from
sir.
us. Watch what you wish for. 'Cause-
But I want to make sure that what we're doing is what you guys have in your heads, so we're not frustrating the board with our decisions. You
So
know,
I think there's a disconnect there. And I think most of that's on the board, frankly. 'cause
Yeah,
we haven't
I'll
been-
back up what Bill said earlier. I was elected to the board 8 years ago. I'll be up for election again if I choose to keep continuing. And the reason I did that was because band, of which my son was very involved and loved. That's why he went to school for a couple of years in middle school. He loved Steve Mitchell and wanted to learn the French horn.
Mhm.
And they were going to make it a 0 period, which would have made it viable still, but they were trying to cut and tweak and all that. And for the first time ever, I went to a board meeting as a parent and stood up in front of the dais, nervous as you can all be. And now I'm up there every day. But at the same time, if my son were to go through college, through junior high again now, he would be in that makerspace every single day. I got a video from him today. He's at Tesla learning to program the robotics. He's working full time in the automotive construction industry as an engineer.
Awesome.
But that music was what his passion was at the time. He started the robotics club. He was in the STEM corps. He loved everything he did in high school, but he did band every 4 years. And if it had been cut or taken to 0 period, he might not have ever done that. He wouldn't have played 4 years at the university. Who knows? His life would be much different. My daughter did 2 years, didn't really like the way the band was going, wasn't crazy about the kids in there or how the teacher started things, and didn't really like the atmosphere. She stopped playing and hasn't touched her flute ever since. You never know how kids are going to react. But as Bill was mentioning a little while ago, we can put this onto ourselves for not having provided that guidance. But there's another little wrinkle to it. I kind of connected the dots as we did that, and I'm not trying to fault anything. It may be the example that that Brian gave a little while ago, not anything to do with you with enrollment going down, but maybe not anything to do with us either. During that 8 years, we've had 3 superintendents, we've had 4 high school principals, we've had 3 middle school principals, we've had 3 Brooks principals, we've eliminated Windsor Creek, all these changes have happened. That's not an excuse necessarily, but we haven't had that deep conversation like we're doing tonight about where did we get here? How did we get here? Where could we have changed things? How could we have made important decisions? Hopefully we have some continuity now, some structure that will be staying. We want you here for a long term. You've got a contract. We want Brian and Amy to be here and leading the ship at their middle school and high schools. But we have to have that connection. We have to have that conversation, which we haven't had for many years because there's always something else to do or something else to happen or something else to change. But I'm ready to have that if we are willing. We'll have to wait and see if the rest of the board, wants to do extra study sessions or meet in the summer or do whatever we need to do to kind of tighten things up and make some programmatic decisions. But it does affect people's jobs. It does affect what they teach. I've been teaching for 30 years now, and most of the time I've done 2 or 3 subjects, but there's lots of those singletons. Oh, Eric's credentialed for this, but we don't have enough kids in that section now, so let's give them a section of math. Let's give them a section of health. Let's give them a section of Avid. And I do it because I need to be full-time. I don't want to have to go backwards. And I have bumping rights over other people, which isn't always fair either. I don't want somebody else to suffer because I need a spot. But that's the reality of the workforce and the reality of the position we're in and that we all make decisions for. So
I wonder if
we're at almost 8 o'clock here. I don't know where we want to go from here, but I just wanted to kind of connect.
My job is to propose a process by which we can accomplish what we want to accomplish. And I think I've learned a lot about just your thoughts, and I feel like I can take this back to my team and we can really kind of discuss this and maybe create a proposal that might work to get us to where we need to be. We're working on in the same direction.
Well, I like your idea. I wanted to go back to something that you said about, if we need to meet during the summer, to do more study sessions or just to have more conversation around this or whatever you present to us, to have more conversation around what you present, I think is important, but I really don't want to lose the element of this that has to do with equity, because I really want to come back to that. It's really important to me, just because I talked to my daughter's friends' parents and I asked them, how things are going. And I think we have a lot of parents that are checked out. They haven't been pulled into this to understand this flow from a program perspective or just to understand the trajectory of their child's career in high school leading up to college or to other opportunities. I just don't think that is there enough. I think that they need in-person workshops, to get more information. And I have been, to some of our ELAC and DLAC meetings, and there was just a small group of parents. It wasn't like a huge group, so I just really think that they need that information. And I do have concerns about what you said earlier, Bill, which is that we could snap our fingers and we'll lose, the kid in high school. It'll be gone by the time we make a decision about something. So I do feel like we need to ramp up this process, but not forget the equity part, because we just can't forget about the parents that, again, it's not even that they didn't go to college. A lot of them didn't even make it past 6th grade. Like, they really need more hands-on information. They need that guidance and support.
And that's difficult because we have 4 counselors for 1,600 kids. So they get a 10-minute, get a 10-minute meeting, and that's our choice is to fund that way, but it's hard to have those discussions. They do it in their cores as well. There's lots of opportunities, but each kid doesn't have their own personal mentor.
Yes, that's exactly right. And then the other piece I don't want to lose is that I know for some of our kids, the transition from Cali Calmecac to the high school is really difficult, because at Cali Calmecac, you get lots of teachers that look like you. And then as soon as you get to the high school, that's gone. And then that's an important piece too. So I think that we do need to look out for those parents that need that extra support.
Okay. So Jeremy, I think we all have a lot of different ideas and thoughts and perspectives. And then there's a whole bunch of parents and kids out there that do as well. If you could come up, I'm not a process guy.
Luckily I am.
If you could maybe come up with some way where we could, with some urgency, because I am sensitive, I think we all are sensitive to the fact that, hey, these kids, they've got a very short window to get out what we want them to get out with. Come up with some processes that we can talk and take so you can pull out of us and everybody what it is so we can create a very comprehensive direction that we can kind of agree on or discuss, because we may not all agree on it. I mean, Eric may have his 5 programs and Bill might have his 5 and we might have, and they might not all intersect it and what have you.
I mean, I'll tell you what's already in my head. I think that we do design this around Portrait of a Graduate. I think we engage members of our community, representative members of our community. I think we have a committee that comes together and we determine what our Portrait of a Graduate looks like, because that's our umbrella and it drills down to our lower grades. I think it's actually pretty straightforward. So, I mean, that's what I see. That's going to take time. It's similar to the LCAP process. It's just a different focus, but that's really what I see. So, I mean, I think there's more to flesh out than that, but as we're talking, that's where my head's going.
And as Bill mentioned earlier, we can't really change anything for
No, we got a few years.
for this coming, 22, 23 school year, because we have to have staffing and we have to have student interest surveys and all that stuff. It's already, master schedule will be started in a couple of weeks, probably after we have staffing and all that kind of stuff. So I don't like that we've lost sections. I don't like, but again, it's a sum game. So we have to make sure we're in the right spot with that. And we'll
that's a choice
potentially move forward in the future.
I mean, I know Eric's here. That's a choice, right?
Right.
That we've recommended. We've prioritized trying to increase compensation, and so we've really looked to be trim. And that's a choice that the board has to decide to make.
Right.
Well, and I do think we can, while we're going through the process, I mean, the document that is the LCAP seems to me could reflect some more data. And I know it was a squeaky wheel on this before, but our guidance policy document from 5 years ago said, carve out our investment in visual and performing arts to show what we're investing. So the number of those FTEs.
And CTE as well.
And CTE would be another one.
Yeah.
If there was, and those are the 2 that I wrote down, but there could be, culinary and build. I mean, there's
Sure.
and those are, and that doesn't, spend any more money or less money. What it does is it takes those staffing costs and say, all right, let's start to, as a matter of course, capture those. If those are categories of programs, let's reflect that in the LCAP. We reflect that in our English language learners or our intervention special education investments.
Or it could be not something as, I don't want to say small or less important, but it could be the Nueva Core and the exercise science core.
Right.
Maybe those aren't the ones we want to be focusing on either. And that really opens things up if we get rid of those for elective choices. Not that I want to do that, but that's another consideration.
I think
Oh,
that's
Stephanie's here.
yeah.
All right, she pays the bill, then we're done.
That's commitment right there.
Yeah.
As a philosophical question, what if we found out that
Is it a-
No, we're still going. We're almost
aren't
done.
really that interested in some of the arts?
That's what we need to know.
We will bring them to the light.
Well, no, I don't disagree with you there. My mom made me do 3 different types of arts I didn't want to do, including actually 4. And I was really thankful that I did all of them later. And so, so sometimes I think, I feel like we would be quitting. Me personally, if I feel like I would be a quitter if I didn't try and advocate and push for us to at least give it the old one really good effort to invest and focus on our younger kids and see if we can develop that interest. Again, with COVID these last couple of years, I don't know of any school, any program in anything that hasn't lost momentum, a lot of momentum. And a lot of these things are having to get recreated. And so just as we go forward and we have our little discussions and workshops and whatever, I would like us to think about how that might look if the rest of y'all are interested of do we and can we invest in that 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade level, see if we can promote it and see if it will grow and it will continue on.
Yeah, we just have to decide.
I don't know if it will.
Yeah.
But I don't know that we, as a district, and maybe I'm wrong, because I haven't been involved in this part of it. Maybe we have, and it just kind of peters out. But if we haven't, I'd really like to give that a shot.
Sure.
And really give it a lot of horsepower to see if we can develop it. And then if the interests just don't sustain themselves or don't continue to grow, well, then we learn from that, and then we just know that it's just not.
We want to offer the public
Oh.
any discussion.
Thanks, Eric.
Oh, yeah.
Unless anybody else has,
We've talked a lot. So.
we have. So I'd like to go ahead and open it up to public comment to discuss anything that we've just kind of talked about in the last 2 hours.
I'd just like to chime in for a moment and
Can
thank
you
you all
say your name and what?
My name's Eric Hunter.
Got it.
Part of why I'm here is because I inadvertently became part of this process a few weeks ago of dealing with the budget and working in negotiations and all that in the bottom line. And so my future is hopefully here in Windsor Unified School District, especially after tonight, even more so I prefer to be here. I really appreciate the passion you guys have for the arts. Listening to you talk, I've put this all together. And I feel a little bit like an inadvertent catalyst in all of that. This is bound to happen anyway.
Sure.
But I do want to put out there that I think Windsor High School does compete with Art Quest in a very positive way that a lot of other high schools don't, because of the kind of programs we offer there. And that arts are taken seriously. And I think a lot of other comprehensive high schools certainly have arts programs, but don't integrate it throughout the entire curriculum quite like Windsor does. Also, in terms of the CT, just a comment with the photography, because that's what I've been doing the last few years. That will be CTE next year, whether I do it or the person who's probably slated to take over for me is already credentialed CTE, and I am in the process and should be in a week now. The grant, I don't know enough about that to really speak to it. I mean, we are working on that. But I would just put out there that photography is something that can be, that can grow. And I think can also attract. And there's a lot of it in our county professionally, a lot of resources here to pull on. And in my short time here at Windsor, I've met a lot of professionals, both who are professional and both teach at the college through organizing the SoCo Clicks program. And it's exciting. And I think it desperately needs, whether it's through CTE funds, which hopefully next year will be coming, or through a little help from the board and other grants, it desperately needs a shot in the arm. It's been a real frustrating year dealing with the technology in my classroom. Thanks to Amy, the cameras aren't a problem. It's now become the computers to run the software. And if that were more modernized, I think you'd see a thriving program and kids wanting to do it for a second and maybe even a third year. In fact, I have no doubt that if we grow and have 3 full classes, probably would in a short period of time. Just wanted to put that out there because I, started to see the vision working with my friend, Mr. Rigney over there and a few people at the high school on trying to develop and modernize it this year. So I'm a little sad about how that kind of worked out, but I'm also hopeful that I'll be still around, keeping an eye on everybody here too and teaching kids.
Thank you, Eric. Does anybody else have can you just give us your name, please?
I'm Julia Feldman, and I'm Eric's wife. But I'm also a practicing visual artist, as is Eric, full-time with an MFA, and I have my master's as well. We both grew up in families of artists and turned out a daughter who you also met at the last meeting, who is quite a good artist, but chose biology and public health education. So it's what you're exposed to, because all of that, she was first exposed to a chicken being dissected and put back together in elementary school. But what I wanted to say was, one, when we think about parents, I think that it takes two parents right now to support a family. I don't know that there are very many parents who are at home just being able to shuffle their kids around to clubs. And so that the school offers this really rich art education, I think is really important. And I also think that you could open classes to the freshmen that are closed in some of the art departments, art classes that would also fill classes. And that in the big picture, when you take like digital photography, which of course is what I've been involved with Eric lately, is that he teaches science, history, math, and writing along with that class. They're not just clipping pictures and doing nothing else. They're getting exposed to artists of all caliber, and now he has a huge group of people to bring in as speakers and talk to the kids. Anyway, so that's it. I've also been a mentor at high school and elementary school. And I think it's a great program, mentorships.
Thank you very much.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's all
A little
good.
rambly.
Nope, it's all good. Is there anybody else that would like to?
Hi, Terry Oden. I'm a grandparent. I just want to address a couple of things I heard and maybe puncture the balloon. Chris mentioned that CTE is driven by high wage, high demand industries. That's in direct contradiction in many ways to what Bill's asking for, which is joy and creativity. I know every parent wants their kid to succeed. Succeed comes with a lot of different words attached to it. It isn't always high wage, high demand. And I want to address this issue of it's too late. It's never too late. When I was growing up, we were pretty much told you've got to pick and choose and you're going to have a career for the rest of your life. When my kids were in school, they were told to plan for at least 5 careers. That means you have to come out of high school, out of that K-12, with the capacity to learn something beyond what you've already learned. Means we have to open doors, not close doors. And I know that's where it gets difficult. How do we decide in what sphere of high school to eliminate 3 FTEs? Well, we base it on the electives. We don't look and say, oh, well, let's increase the number of students in the math classes in order to provide more room for teachers in the arts or whatever other electives. I don't want to mix apples and oranges and go when I was in high school, when my kids were in high school nowadays. But the world has changed. And my granddaughter went to college. She did not get to see a whole lot of electives. Her elective was Spanish. Mm-hmm. She's taken AP Spanish as a freshman. That's the capacity to move a college year out of the way in terms of foreign language. And her attitude to AP Spanish, it's boring. She's not learning anything new. She's acquiring more vocabulary and a better capacity to talk about literature in Spanish. But she's bored. She would rather be taking an art class. But that would have meant she had to add a 7th class, and her counselor discourages incoming 9th graders from adding that class. I know some did, but she and her mom talked about it and went, well, the counselor said probably shouldn't do that. So she's doing art at home, wishing she was in an art class instead of Spanish AP. Okay. Anyway, it's never too late. And joy and creativity don't always match high wage, high demand.
Thank you, Terry.
No.
Is there anybody else that would like to say anything?
And one more thing, you can graduate high school up from a high school digital program, photography and digital arts, and start at twice minimum wage without stepping foot in a college. And I think the college has gotten really, really expensive. I mean, the junior college is ridiculously expensive. So not everybody gets to go.
Agreed. Thank you. That was another reason why I kind of liked the build program one, because I'm in the construction world. And I know a lot of 27-year-old boys, well, not boys, boys that got
You
involved.
knew them as boys.
Yeah, knew them as boys that got involved.
Making
And
$100 an
they're
hour.
27 years old, they're making over 100 grand now.
Yeah.
So after going through our program.
What
So
about girls?
everybody
Are
that
they
wants to
really-
get in that industry is making really good money. So I just wanted to clear one thing because it was brought up earlier and I forgot to mention it. And that was that somebody talked about Santa Rosa schools, how they kind of had, you know, one school was this and this and this.
Magnet.
I would really not like to see Windsor do that. Because Eric and I might be going to Windsor High School and Eric's in a certain core and I'm in another core. We may be different people and then have different interests, but we can be great friends with different things. And I think if you go to a school that's just kind of all one certain direction, I think you get, I don't know how to describe it, but I like the diversity that our high school has of education, people and opportunities. And I wouldn't want us to ever lose that. So,
Which is a big part of why I've never wanted to change the format of the cluster schools that we have, because I don't want one school on one side of town and one on the other. I want everybody together as much as we can.
anyhow, yeah, any board members want to say any little thoughts or?
So do you think we have a little bit of, it's hard to find direction from this tonight, but.
It is tough,
You
but
have
I
a
think
little road-
I don't
road
have
work to do?
direction. I don't have direction from you because I have different ideas still, but I think that's fine. I have direction in terms of what I think the process needs to be to get all of us to a point where we know what our marching orders are as staff from the board. So I think I've got that, and I'll propose something to you. But
So I'll
I'll,
take this ball of yarn and
Need a sweat.
man, it's ball of yarn, ball of something. We'll figure this thing out. We'll get it.
anything we need to announce.
It's a buggy whip.
Yeah, I'll take this buggy whip and we'll figure something out.
You didn't think you could learn anything from me. Anything that anybody needs to bring up before that we publicly say
We've agendized,
before?
this is only agendized.
Yeah, this-
Right, no, I mean for our next meeting coming up, any issues or comments before we bring to an end? Can I have a motion?
I'll motion to adjourn for time.
All righty, can I have a
Thank you for a
second?
good conversation.
I'll second.
And all those in favor?
Hi.
Aye. All right, and 5-0.
Guys ready to go to bed this
All
morning.
right.
Thank you.
Don't wait to miss